We've got new developments on the San Bernardino terror attack more than a week after 14 people were killed by Tashfeen Malik and her husband Syed Rizwan Farouk. Investigators have learned that one of their neighbors, also a friend, allegedly built pipe bombs with those two killers. But Enrique Marquez, who bought the rifles used in the massacre, claims that he had nothing to do with the devices built for the couple's deadly attack. Now, this comes as dive teams are searching for evidence in a lake the couple reportedly visited before the attack. Officials say they're hunting for a hard drive that might have been removed from the home in an attempt to hide their tracks. Now, the attacks in San Bernardino are adding urgency for the U.S. to identify and track down potential terrorists in the U.S. And many analysts and counterterrorism officials will tell you that lone wolf-style attackers are some of the most difficult to identify. Our Polo Sandoval has more on the hunt for us. Polo?
Hey, Victor, good morning. Well, those lone wolf attackers are very difficult to track because they don't often pop up on the radar until they become operational. And as we've seen in recent weeks, sadly, that's oftentimes too late. But I'll tell you what has counterterrorism officials here in the U.S. particularly concerned is this level of ISIS, or at least support for ISIS here in America. One study now suggesting it has reached an unprecedented level.
There is no telling how many ISIS-inspired operatives may currently be in the U.S. There are, however, the numbers. The FBI reporting it has some 900 active cases where they're looking at potential ISIS sympathizers. Pair that number with figures published by the George Washington University earlier this month. They show at least 300 Americans and/or U.S.-based sympathizers who actively support ISIS on social media and spread the terror group's propaganda. 71 people have been arrested by U.S. authorities for so-called ISIS-related activities, 56 of them this year alone, the most terrorism-related arrests since 9/11, according to the GW report. Ahmed Mohammed El Gamal is one of them. The Arizona man is charged with helping a New York college student get ISIS training in Syria, his case among dozens making their way through federal court systems across the country. The figures reflect the constant struggle for U.S. officials to track down extremists already in the country. The efforts were not enough to thwart last week's ISIS-inspired attack in San Bernardino, California. Investigators continue digging into Syed Farouk and Tashfeen Malik's past.
We also believe they were inspired by foreign terrorist organizations. We're working very hard to understand exactly their association and the source of their inspiration.
The U.S. facing its greatest terrorism threat since 9/11, a sobering statement from the FBI.
And U.S. officials have previously estimated that at least 250 Americans have actually traveled abroad to join some terrorist group. Now, out of those, only a few dozen actually joined the ranks, Victor. About 20 of them have actually died in that fighting. But what this does, it essentially adds some more perspective to these numbers that are constantly changing, Victor, as U.S. authorities try to stay a step ahead.
And trying to craft a strategy on how to stop these self-radicalized lone wolves. Polo Sandoval, thanks so much.
You bet.
Terrorism expert Sajan Gohel joining us now. He's International Security Director of the Asia Pacific Foundation, a counterterrorism think tank. Sajan, thank you so much for being with us. We know that one of the major obstacles here, authorities say, is this encrypted communication, and it really thwarts them from being able to track terror suspects. What's the remedy, if at all, that can be overcome?
It's a very difficult challenge, Christy, because as you mentioned, the ISIS-inspired terrorists are being guided online as to how to communicate without attracting attention from the authorities. There are a number of programs, new media platforms that are used to hide, mask their communication strategies. Some are so advanced that even the authorities are finding it difficult to basically break them open and find out what levels of communication, who they've been talking to, what strategies are being devised. This is an uphill treadmill for the authorities, I'm afraid.
Well, there's this new poll that shows Americans are more fearful of a terrorist attack now than at any other time since September 11th. Take a look at this. 78% believe an attack is or 79% believe an attack is very or somewhat likely to happen in the next few months. Do you think this is in reaction to San Bernardino, or was San Bernardino a real wake-up call for the U.S.?
Unfortunately, San Bernardino is very much part of a calculated strategy by ISIS to encourage lone wolves, or as I prefer to call them, self-starters, to carry out attacks on the name of the group, to operate independently, but to hit countries repeatedly over a period of time. And the fear that Americans are expressing is echoed in the United Kingdom. People here also expect and feel that a potential attack could happen in the next few months. I'm afraid this is the environment and scenario that we're facing, which is potentially worse than what we had post 9/11. With Al-Qaeda, there was a system, there was some feeling that the authorities were able to predict and disrupt plots. Here it's spontaneous and sporadic.
So John Gohel, appreciate your insight as always, sir. Thank you.
Pleasure.
All right, coming up this hour.
I'm the leading state sponsor of terrorism.